our team was doing really well, and I was having, hands down, the best year of football of my life. And, I went in, and our offense coordinator at the time, Dave Caccini, sat me down in his office and, kind of just broke down what he saw in me and, what he thought, my future could be. And this is a guy who's coached NFL caliber players before. I mean, Ryan Fitzgerald is one of them. He was up at Harvard. And Andre Roberts, who has become kind of this crazy return guy in the NFL. So he's been around NFL talent. So to hear from him that I had the potential, to take my, playing career to the next level, obviously, I took that with a lot of respect because he's been around guys who have kind of made themselves a household name in the NFL. Obviously, kind of made the breakdown. Obviously, you need to work on, this, and this. But that's, no matter how good of a player you are, there's always, some part of your game you can work on. You're never going to be your best. There's always going to be something you can improve upon. But it was, probably that moment where hearing that from a guy who I highly respected, who knew his football, who's been around a lot of talented players, that was probably that time in my career where I was like, okay, things are kind of coming to reality here. I have a chance. Now it's just basically the ball's in my court, to keep putting up numbers and, to keep growing as a player to hopefully reach that level.
And we're here with former NFL wide receiver Ryan Spadola. What a cool moment. It's also I feel like it's so underrated to have a great statistical year and also have your team win, because I think that's a lot of things that coaches look for. But let's just walk through when you got that call from the New York Jets. Who were you with? Where were you? What was that moment like for you to basically saying, we're going to sign you here?
Yeah, so I was at Lehigh University. Funny enough, my sister actually had a track meet up there that same weekend. So my family was there with me, my brother, my sister, my mom, and my now fiance at the time was there.
Yes, and a big congratulations to Ryan, by the way, who is getting married this November.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, I found my one lucky girl, and hopefully, she'll be the one that stays with me forever. So it'll be fun and exciting.
That's awesome. You make it.
Yeah, back to that weekend. Yeah, so it was just, basically my mom and my siblings, we were sitting there in my living room off campus, and, we're sitting there watching the last day of the draft, which going into it, with talks of my age and just kind of where, different websites and stuff ranked me, they kind of saw me going somewhere between the 5th and the 7th round. I thought for sure I'd be getting a phone call, while the TV was on and while they were doing the announcements and everything. But, unfortunately, that didn't happen, even though teams called and said, hey, we're going to look you take you in the next round. Basically, actions are different than words.
Right.
So, obviously the draft concluded. And at that point, I had two teams who were really interested in bringing me on. One, the Indianapolis Colts, and the other, the New York Jets. I just felt, with looking at the roster of what the New York Jets looked like at the time, and obviously being the close proximity to home, it was just kind of like that perfect mesh of what better opportunity to hopefully, begin your NFL career in your home state, in under an hour drive from your house. Your family and friends can kind of embrace and kind of experience the whole, journey that you're about to begin on. So I ended up, speaking with the Rex and ended up making, that my destination.
It's so cool to be able to play in front of your hometown like that. You played for some interesting coaches, Rex Ryan, like you just said, Joe Philbin in Miami, Mike Smith in Atlanta, and Bruce Arians. Do you have any funny stories that you can share here with any of these guys? I mean, they all kind of are their own unique characters in their own way. But talk a little bit about that. Do you have any funny stories for us?
I don't think any crazy funny stories I can think of off the top of my head. Philbin, he was a very, very, very disciplined kind of blue collar, type of a guy. So he was kind of closed off to the players. There really wasn't much player interaction with him. Obviously Bruce Arians, he is that hothead. He will vocalize how he feels. I would say a lot of his funny moments came where you weren't on the bad side of a play that he was reviewing during, film study. A lot of that stuff that can't be repeated because it's not obviously appropriate, for some audiences. But I mean, some of the lines that I've heard that man, blurt out, and I think a lot of guys could say the same, were things that would be pure gold at comedy shows. But I would say probably the most experience or kind of relationships I had with the coach, probably Rex Ryan. He was a guy that was real engaged with his players. Hence why he kind of got the name as a player's coach.
Right.
Whether it be going out and playing paintball with him on a random day in the off season, where he's getting lit up left and right, rolling around, seeing a man of that size acting like a kid, that was always funny. Even just kind of to see him out in the town. I mean, he was just always around, and he was just a carefree, wanted to have fun with life kind of a guy. And nothing really sticks off the top of my head where I can sit there and tell it word for word how it went down, but I'd probably say the most memories I look back on in terms of involvement with Coach, I would say Rex is probably the most comical.
Yeah, Rex does seem so personable and such a. And now he's on TV. Obviously, I think he does a really good job. We're here with Ryan Spadola, former NFL wide receiver. What are some wide receivers that you looked at and you tried to kind of model your game after, or just basically try to take some things that they did that you wanted to apply to your game when you were either in high school or in college or even the NFL level?
Yeah, so I think like most kids kind of grew up there my age that were fans of the game and fans of receivers. Obviously, everyone idolized Randy Moss. I mean, what that guy did on game day was, something special. Yeah, he was a tall, physical guy, but I mean, what his ball skills were like, the way he ran routes, his competitiveness, towards the game, that was a guy I always idolized. A lot of people said, when you go through the draft process, who does that player remind you of? I got a lot of Ed McCaffrey comparisons. But then, through my time in the NFL, I was, really fortunate to come across some of, if arguably not some of the best players, to ever walk the field at the position, and Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, Julio Jones, just to name a few. Just kind of be able to take, a lot of these future first out Hall of Fame guys and to see how they approach the game, what their pros were, what do they really focus on, and just kind of take a little bit from each. I mean, obviously they were, given the gift of athletic ability that just can't be taught. So that obviously helped, make them who they are. But as a guy like myself, to just kind of learn from them and even just take a step back and watch them do certain things, I was definitely able to take a lot of that stuff and try to, bring it into my career, whether it be just the work ethic, how they became motivated, way they ran certain routes, the way they worked out, just different parts, a lot of different variables within their game I try to, pick apart and bring it to mind which may best suit.
And we're here with former NFL wide receiver Ryan Spadola. What was the biggest adjustment you had to make from college to the NFL?
I would say without question, the playbook. I think not the playbook in the sense of overall volume, just for a guy like myself, I knew I was going to be coming in, I had to learn probably 3 to 4 positions, all the receiver spots, understand audibles and this and other thing. And I mean, in some offenses, you're responsible for, a blitz or a hot or what it may be. Now in college, there's a lot of our plays where the quarterback would call it out. You only had one adjustment. It was that, you were good. Where in the NFL, especially the slot receivers, you might get a call where a hot scheme built in, but the quarterback won't point it out, and you have to be able to read the defense and react quickly on the fly. And obviously at the NFL level, the biggest difference amongst players and skill is that the interior seven, whether the linebackers and defensive line, are much more athletic than what I saw at the FCS level. Now, the skill players, DBs, corners, really in terms of actual physical speed and talent, it was pretty level. I mean, the only difference was these guys had a better knack for the game and had better ball skills. But being able to understand different schemes and watching, these interior seven guys is probably, the toughest thing to adapt to.
Very, very. I am so intrigued in just the next level of football because even from a high school to a college level, I even think it is so different. For high school basketball, at least for me, it was just like, you had 2 good players in high school. You said, okay, go score kind of thing. And then you get to college, and then you really start to learn the game. And I can't even imagine the learning, from the college level to the NFL. Last one here. We talked about it. You're engaged now. And if you're planning on have kids, we haven't talked about that. But with some of the stuff that have happened to players post-football and you knowing the violence of the game, if you have a son, Ryan, will you steer him away from football? I wanted to get your thoughts here on what you think and how you would approach if your son wanted to play football.
That's definitely become a very interesting topic, and I know a lot of guys have kind of begun the discussion with it. Let's say this, my kid, if I were to be blessed to have a boy in the future, if he wanted to pursue a football career, I would totally back it. Now, whether that be him going in the backyard and playing pickup with his friends or, playing organized football, now that might be a little bit different of a discussion, just because with the way that it's coached at the youth level, I think may hinder me pursuing my son to play at the youth level just because of the coaches that he's going to be coached under, learning proper techniques. And when you're a kid, listen, you kind of get distracted. You obviously aren't always, mentally sharp. So the form may struggle here and there, and that's where those minor, head collisions may come into play. And let's be honest, the more head collisions you have, the more likely you are to have some of these symptoms down the road of post-concussion things. So there would probably be the thought, seeing where football is in, 10 years, 15 years, whenever it may be, that may skew my decision-making. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to high school level, if he wants to play high school, 100%. He just went from now to be from a boy to a man. It's a little bit different than the way they learn and the way they play would obviously be different. But I would love to have my kid play football. That's kind of the passion and love that I had growing up. It took me a little bit of time to kind of find that direction. But to be able to kind of watch my son maybe grow in love to the game that I love, I think like any, former guy who played football, kind of be like a dream to see that. But, time will tell. First, you can have a boy, right? So.
Very, very interesting. Great stuff here. Ryan, thank you so much for giving me the time today. I know you're a busy man. Good luck with everything post-football. Great spot today, and we will keep in touch. Thanks again, Ryan.
Thank you for having me on, Steve. I really appreciate it.
And a big thanks to Ryan Spadola. Really fun. It's funny, how I actually got into contact with him. I go out on a Saturday night. I think it was a few weeks ago, and Ryan and I trained at the same place. When I was playing college basketball, he trained at the same place that I was working out at, and he was to work out before me all the time. I'd come there and I'd be like, oh my God, who is this guy? He is absolutely insane. And I asked my trainer, I said, hey, where does he play? Who does he play for? And he's like, oh man, that's Ryan Spadola. He plays wide receiver for, I think at the time it was the Detroit Lions. I'm like, wow. Like I was just in shock. So I obviously, we talked or whatever every time we'd see each other before a workout. And then I actually saw him at a bar a few weeks ago. And I go up to him, I'm like, Ryan Spadola. And he's like, what's up? Did you train with RC? He didn't remember my name, which kind of was, it is what it is. I was like, hey, Ryan, you should come on the show. And he's like, oh, of course. And so it's very funny how that works and how this works. And obviously him coming on was an awesome, awesome thing. But okay, let's do Gopher football. Gophers squeaked out a real tough one Thursday night as Phil Fleck and the crew escaped what would have been one of the most embarrassing losses in Gopher history. Back in 2017 when PJ Fleck was hired, I'll never forget what he said, and I think it was first press conference. He goes, Minnesota is a sleeping giant. Do you remember when he said that?
Minnesota, I think, is a sleeping giant.
Well, I guess he got the sleeping part right. So I get home from work. I had peeked at the score before I left the city, and the Gophers were up 7, so I was like, okay, good. It's still not the lead you want, obviously, against a FBS AA team, but still, you're up by 7. So I go on my bus. I get home about 45 minutes later. I don't have any data left on my phone, so I have no idea what the score is. I get home. I turn on the Big Ten Network. Actually, it was Fox Sports 1. Put on Fox Sports 1, and the Gophers are down 7 at home to a Division I AA school. And Don't Stop Believin' is playing throughout the stadium. Let me repeat. Don't Stop Believing is playing down 7 to South Dakota State. Can it get any more embarrassing than that? Like, if you're going to play Don't Stop Believing, that's a game where if you're playing Wisconsin, you're down 7, you're playing Michigan, Ohio State. Like, don't you want to save that song, that chant, for a bigger game, not against South Dakota State? So right there were so many telling cards about this night, and that one really stuck out to me. As simple as that sounds, and as maybe stupid as it sounds to some people, playing Don't Stop Believing in the first game of the season against South Dakota State at home should not happen. It's plain and simple. And let's not get this twisted here. South Dakota State